check out our streaming schedule for this week. We've got tons of content in terms of the NFL and college football, as we're going live just about every single day this week. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment where we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation. I'm going to give you a hypothetical scenario. This player right here is Lamar Jackson, the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. And in case you didn't know, he's really good at football, to the point where he is one of the most unstoppable players in the NFL, and maybe the best quarterback in football right now. During the 2023 season, Lamar won the MVP after guiding the Ravens to the #1 seed in the AFC, throwing for over 3,600 yards and running for another 800. Like I said, it's tough to play against Lamar, and everyone knows that. But what if a defensive coordinator, so a person who isn't even on the field, decides to make life even tougher for his team by coming out before the game and saying that he was not only guaranteeing the fact that his team was going to win the game, but that Lamar would throw 4 interceptions and would be shut down? At least when a player talks trash, they have the ability to back it up on the field with their play. But when a defensive coordinator talks trash and issues a double whammy by guaranteeing a win and for the MVP to get shut down, he passes the burden on to his players to take care of his dirty work, and does it in such a way where he looks like a moron. A defensive coordinator saying something stupid like that, simply put, would be really stupid. But while that might be stupid, what's not stupid is hitting that like button down below, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. We post every single day about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, so if you like that sort of stuff, then this is the place for you. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. Well, I bring that crazy hypothetical scenario up because, as dumb as that might sound, that's exactly what happened in 1972, when a defensive coordinator decided that it would be a good idea to talk trash to the literal MVP of the league. This is Washington running back Larry Brown, and in 1972, when his team was taking on the New York Giants, let's just say that Giants defensive coordinator Jim Garrett decided that it would be a good idea to do the stupidest thing possible and rile up a team that won earlier in the season, rile up a player that torched them earlier in the season, and rile up a player that was the literal MVP of the entire National Football League. And let's just say that the results are incredibly predictable to anyone with a functioning brain. Because this is the story behind one of the dumbest trash talk moments in the history of the NFL, and quite possibly one of the dumbest moments in the century-long history of the New York Football Giants. Before I talk about the game at hand, and the comments made by the Giants defensive coordinator that left everyone scratching their heads, and still leaves people scratching their heads more than half a century later, we need some context to understand, quite simply, just who this man right here was. 1972 was a fantastic year for running backs, as there was talent at the position everywhere you looked. You had Hall of Fame running backs and fullbacks in the prime of their careers who were torching defenses on a week-to-week basis, like O.J. Simpson, John Riggins, Franco Harris, Larry Zonka, and Floyd Little. However, the best running back during the 1972 campaign was this man that you've been watching, Washington running back Larry Brown. After getting drafted in the 8th round of the 1969 NFL Draft, Brown made an immediate impact by making it to the Pro Bowl in 3 consecutive seasons from 1969 to 71. And in 1970, he was named an AP First Team All-Pro for his efforts after leading the league with 1,125 rushing yards. We were just 3 years into his career, and Brown was already on a Hall of Fame trajectory, seeing as only 2 other players in NFL history had more rushing yards over their first 3 seasons at the time, with those men being Jim Brown and Gale Sayers, as in 2 of the best to ever do it. But as great as Brown was throughout his first 3 seasons, the 1972 season was a completely different beast in all the best ways. Because even though Washington had a fantastic season with the Over-the-Hill Gang and would make it to their first Super Bowl in franchise history, thanks to great roster construction and shrewd moves by George Allen, none of that would be even the slightest bit possible without the help of Larry Brown, who ended the year not just as a Pro Bowler for the 4th straight season, and not just as an AP First Team All-Pro for the 2nd time in 3 years, but as the AP Offensive Player of the Year and as the MVP of the entire league, winning the award rather handily with over 60% of the votes and becoming the first Washington player to ever win this award. Brown finished the 1972 season with 1,216 rushing yards, which was the second most in the league, only trailing Buffalo Bills running back O.J. Simpson by 35 yards. However, when you factor Brown's ability out of the passing game, where he had 473 receiving yards, Brown finished the year with 1,689 yards from scrimmage, or a whopping 140 per game, seeing as he only played in 12 games that season. To no one's surprise, this was the top total in the league. And while Brown had many good games during that 1972 season, as you'd assume one would when they win the MVP over the course of their entire body of work, the best game he had, bar none, was this game right here. Their Week 7 game at Yankee Stadium against their NFC East rival, the New York Giants. Washington ended up winning the game by a final score of 23-16, and the main reason why they won the game was because Brown was an absolute menace, running 29 times for 191 yards, averaging 6.6 yards per carry, and scoring a critical rushing touchdown in the third quarter, where fans were so frustrated afterwards that they threw trash and bottles onto the field in what I like to call the first Bottlegate. You can learn more about Bottlegate by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Brown also had 42 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, so both touchdowns that Washington scored on the day were scored in some capacity by Brown, who had over 200 yards from scrimmage. And this wasn't anything new for Brown, who played better against the Giants than seemingly any other team in football, as he was the way superior 1970s version of Boston Scott against the Giants. When the two teams met on December 5th, 1971, Brown had 129 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in a 23-7 win, which was 3 possessions back then since there was no 2-point conversion. Long story short, if the Giants were going to beat Washington, avoid getting swept, and have a shot at making it to the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade, they were going to need to find a way to stop the man of the hour, none other than Larry Brown himself. So how do you stop this man right here? Well, I don't know the answer to that question, because it's easier said than done. Not too many teams had the right answer and knew how to stop the running back off to one of the greatest starts to a career in NFL history. However, I do know the wrong answer. I do know what you're not supposed to do. Almost like how with my goals to figure out how to stop the bathtub from flooding, I know that you're not supposed to go in there with a toaster. Because prior to the rematch against Washington, New York Giants defensive coordinator Jim Garrett decided to do the dumbest thing possible and put the onus on his players to stop the league MVP. Because he didn't say anything along the lines of, "I believe that we can stop him." He didn't say anything like, "We need to stop him in order to win." He outright guaranteed that his team was going to win the game, and that Larry Brown would have a stagger. Because that seems like a super smart idea for a defensive coordinator to do that. Said Garrett leading up to the game, "We're going to win," and you can say, "I guarantee it." Alright, pulling the old Joe Namath. But it's even worse because when Namath said it, at least he had the power on the field to back up his guarantee. You are a defensive coordinator. You're not the one making tackles or absorbing the contact or anything like that. You're making this mess and having other people who had nothing to do with it take the pain and the brunt of your comments as a result. And it gets even worse, because Garrett said on this man right here, Larry Brown, "We stopped him so many times on the line of scrimmage, but he broke away." Brown's not going to get 191 yards again. He's not going to get 100. And you can send that back to Washington. Genius. Absolutely genius strategy there by Garrett to say that, and then to make sure that if you didn't get the comment, that Washington would get it and use it as bulletin board material. I love how Garrett's comments boiled down to, "Yeah, he had nearly 200 rushing yards against us last time, but he broke tackles, so that doesn't count." That's not how this works at all. Not even close. If you said, "Brown's a good player, but part of why he had so many yards last time was because we didn't do a great job tackling," that's one thing, and that's a complete non-story. But to frame it like this, that's like me saying in tennis, "I served the ball in place so many times, but my opponent returned it." Do you know how many running backs get into the second level on every play and have a hole as big as Moses parting the Red Sea? Very few. You don't see it. They get their work done at the line of scrimmage by patient running, by hitting holes when they do open up, and by breaking tackles. For you to make those comments as if that was a mulligan because Brown didn't have 20-yard holes at the line of scrimmage on every play shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the game and shows that you might not be fit to be running a defense and running a big unit of a team. So that takes us to this game right here. It's November 12th, 1972. It's Week 9, and we're at RFK Stadium for this New York-Washington rematch that the Giants, simply put, have to win. They enter the game at 5-3, 2 games back of Washington for the NFC East lead, and 1 game back of Dallas for the wild card at 6-2. Win this game, and you still have a shot at winning the division, and you can work yourself into a tie if all goes according to plan for the wild card. Lose this game, and not only do your chances of winning the NFC East drop to 0, but your chances of catching Dallas with just 5 games to play would be very slim. I'll just put it like that. And for New York to win this game against Washington, they would have to find a way to stop the MVP of the league, Larry Brown. Even though Brown torched them the last time they played, and even though Brown's got a chip on his shoulder, because not only did the Giants defensive coordinator foolishly guarantee a win, but even more foolishly said that Brown didn't play all that well last time, a game where he had 191 yards, mind you, and that they were going to hold him to under 100. Take a wild guess how you think this game went for the Giants. Yeah, poorly. Really freaking poorly. To the surprise of no one with more than 4 functioning brain cells, Washington completed the sweep, delivering what felt like the dagger in New York's season, as Washington won the game by a final score of 27-13. Offensively, the Giants couldn't get anything going, as starting quarterback Norm Snead went just 14 for 16, completing 53% of his passes for 117 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 33.7, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. On the flip side, Billy Kilmer had a great game under center for Washington, going 15 for 23, completing 65% of his passes for 256 yards and a touchdown, and a passer rating just a hair under 100 in one of his best outings of the season. Especially in the second half, Washington showed why they were one of the best teams in the NFL and one of the favorites in the conference to make it to the Super Bowl. But what about Larry Brown? Well, once again, to the surprise of no one, the Giants were unable to stop Brown, as he did exactly what he did the last time. Jim Garrett said that there was no chance whatsoever that Brown was going to get over 100 yards rushing, and just like his last guarantee, he was wrong. Really freaking wrong, as Brown ran for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns, finishing the game with 131 yards from scrimmage, which meant that across the 2 games that Washington played against New York, Brown had 364 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns. Turns out, maybe it wasn't the smartest idea to tease the beast. Maybe making that guarantee was going to increase tensions between the sides, lead to a fight breaking out after the game, and be the impetus for bad blood in this matchup. Oh wait, it was! Good job, Giants. You destroyed your season in part because your defensive coordinator couldn't keep his mouth shut. And as I alluded to earlier, after the game between these 2 teams behind me right here, Washington would go on to make it to the Super Bowl, making it to Super Bowl 7 after a phenomenal season with the Over-the-Hill Gang. You can learn more about their 1972 campaign, and in particular, their divisional round win against the Green Bay Packers, by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But as for the Giants, this game was the final nail in the coffin. New York was 3 back of Washington, or really 3.5 back since Washington swept them, so they owned the tiebreaker, and the Giants would do absolutely nothing the rest of the way. They would finish the season with an 8-6 record, and would wait another 9 years to make it to the playoffs, not making it until the 1981 season. But hey, at least defensive coordinator Jim Garrett got to criticize Larry Brown for some reason. At least he got to call him overrated and not that good of a player, you freaking idiot. Look, I'm not anti-trash talk. I'd be a massive hypocrite if I was. Jalen Ramsey was on my team for a while, and that was his entire MO, just trash-talking the entire league every chance he could get. But if you're gonna talk trash, you better be able to back it up. And you better not be a coach or a coordinator where you are not the one taking the shots, and where you are having other people pick your fights for you. And if you are going to talk trash, it's not a good idea to do it against the league MVP who tore you apart and ripped you to shreds the first time you met just 2 weeks before. Because on this day in 1972, to answer the question, what can Brown do for you? Turns out, like UPS, it can do a lot. Because the Giants' comments turned out to be a giant mistake. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.